absolutely certain." "Well, you can," said Mary. "The beginning and end of all the trouble to us is our answering for Mrs Kelsey. She was once our nurse, and we know her ways. For the rest, she is as independent of us as that lady in Sandridge." "In that case, of course, I've very little time, and really I don't know where to turn. Perhaps until after this voyage." "Yes, then, if you are dissatisfied, you can make a change." She assumed the matter settled, and began to go into details. "Deb saw Mrs Kelsey while you were away. She's willing enough. She says 10 shillings a week would cover everything. The drainage is all right. Kelsey will see that he has one cow's milk. They'll feed him well, but they won't give him rich things. She's the most careful woman. He'll be out in the air, getting strong all the time. He'll want hardly any clothes in the country. Deb says he'd be better without shoes and socks. I hope he'll be kept out of Miss Deborah's way after that exhibition. Nonsense! She was too rough and ready with him, and she didn't mind a bit. Of course not. She says she likes boys to be boys. He is a thorough boy," Mary proudly declared, bending to kiss a chubby knee. Harry acknowledged the caress with a thumping smack of her bowed head. "Gently, gently," warned the father amiably. "Now, what do you say to our walking over to interview Mrs Kelsey?" Mary pushed her advantage home. "I daresay she will be busy, but she'd give us a few minutes. It would be a satisfaction to her to speak to you herself, and here is a good opportunity. They won't be home much before 2." Guthrie fetched his straw hat. Mary retied the baby's flapping headgear, and they set forth. "Let me have him," she begged, mother-like. "No, he's too heavy for you." The father carried the child, who loved the feel of the strong arms, in which he jumped up and down, continuing to make play with his sturdy little fists. Instead of striking back, Guthrie answered the baby assaults with wild beast roars and gestures that sent the little man into fits of delight. Mary laughed in chorus, keeping touch with the happy creature over the towering shoulder reared between them. It was more than ever like a little self-contained family taking its Sunday stroll. Mrs Kelsey had her Christmas dinner in hand, but came to them in her big white apron and sleeves rolled to her dimpled elbows, smiling, businesslike, charming in her plain, reposeful, straightforward attitude towards the visitors and their mission. No sooner had he beheld her orderly and cheerful house, looked into her kind eyes, and heard her sincere speech, than the young father was satisfied that he had found a good place for his little son. The child seemed to know it too, for when the strange woman drew him to her broad lap, calmly, as if used to doing it, he surrendered himself without a protest. When presently she gave him a drink of milk and a biscuit to munch, he regaled himself peaceably, with the air of feeling quite at home. When he had finished his lunch, he played with a collie puppy. "I'll do my best for him, sir, and I'll not let these young ladies spoil him if I can help it," said Mrs Kelsey, with a smile at Mary Pennycuick. Terms had been arranged, and everything settled. "I hope you will be able to keep him from being any bother to them," said Guthrie earnestly. "Bother?" crowed Mary, whose intention was to visit the child daily. "We'll see to that, Mr Carey, never fear." Mrs Kelsey suggested beginning her duties, with the aid of the little nurse, at once, but Mary would not hear of parting the boy from his father while they could be together, so he was carried back to Redford, to be the plaything of the housekeeper's room for the rest of the day. My baby, Mary began to call him. She had to preside at the great dinner, but was not visible to her family for hours before and after. It was a better Christmas to Guthrie Carey in the end than in the beginning. Deb came back from church, chastened in spirit, to make up to him for her unkindness, on the score of which her warm heart had reproached her. She made him play billiards with her after tea, while Claude was resting after his labours. She chased him deliciously on his errors in the game. She forgot to ask after his baby, but she asked whether it would not be possible to get his leave extended. When he said no, he had had more than his share already. She commended him for his sense of duty, and in her seriousness was more enchanting than in her fun. "But I do wish we could have kept you longer," she flattered him, in her sweet way. "However, we shall have a hostage for your return." Several new people came to dinner, including Mr Goldsworthy and Ruby, the latter sent at once, by Deb's command, to keep little Carey company. Spacious Redford was taxed to the utmost to accommodate its guests, and never was better Christmas cheer provided in the old hall of English Redford than its son in exile dispensed under his Australian roof. When every leaf was put into the dining table, it was so long that Mary at one end was beyond speaking distance of her father at the other, and those at the sides could scarce use their elbows as they ate. The banquet was prodigious, with speeches to wind up with. Mr Goldsworthy, in his oration, disgusted Deb by referring to the host as princely, and to the ladies of the house as his bevy of beautiful daughters. And if the truth must be told, the crowning ceremony of the loving cup was a bit superfluous. It found the host already fuddled beyond a doubt, and several of the guests under suspicion of being so. But in the opinion of all, Redford had celebrated Christmas in an unsurpassably proper manner. 2 mornings later, a wagonette was packed with luggage and 4 passengers: Mary Pennycuick, Guthrie Carey, the baby and the baby's little nurse. They proceeded in a body to the overseer's house, where the load was halved. Mary, the baby, and 1 box were left with Mrs Kelsey, reinforced by the collie puppy and a plate of sugared strawberries. The sailor and the nursemaid, after a few poignant moments, went on to a distant railway station. "Have an easy mind," said Mary, outside the parlour door. "He will be well off with her, and we shall all be looking after him." "How can I thank you?" said the parting guest, barely able to articulate. He wrung her hand, and looked at her kind, red face with feelings unspeakable. "God bless you. God reward you for your goodness to the little chap and me." He was including all the family in his benediction, and it was the father in him that was so touched and overcome. None the less, she accepted the tribute for her own, and to her poverty-stricken womanhood it was wealth indeed. She stood in the porch to watch the wheels of his departing chariot flash through the sun and dust. She stared long at the vacant point of disappearance, like one entranced. When she came to herself, she ran into the house and fell upon little Harry. "My baby!" she crooned passionately. "My baby!" Carey Junior responded with his ready fist, pushing her from him. He was feeding the puppy with a strawberry, and she put her head in the way. "Fie, you mustn't do that," said Mrs Kelsey, mindful of her responsibilities. "That's rude." "Oh, let him," pleaded the girl, infatuated with that look of his father in his face, and she dropped on her knees before him and kissed a dangling foot, with which he kicked her mouth. "Let him do.